Napa Valley, California, a land of endless beauty and exquisite flavors, is one of America's top viticulture areas. This renowned region beckons with its enchanting landscapes and a rich heritage that has made it synonymous with world-class winemaking. Domaine Carneros, one of the hundreds of vineyards, is where the art of sustainable viticulture stands out and where every sip of sparkling wine tells a story of passion and craftsmanship. Since its founding in 1987, Domaine Carneros has pushed the sustainability envelope to ensure the winery lives as lightly on the land as possible while producing world-class sparkling wines, which is why I traveled there to speak with CEO Remi Cohen about the award-winning vineyard she oversees. All right, well, welcome to another installment of Ripple on the Road. I am Mike Shodroff. I am the founder and CEO of the Ripple Center, where we believe that business and industry have a pretty substantial impact on people on the planet in the way in which they're treated. And one of our main missions is to empower, to educate, to inspire other entrepreneurs to incorporate these impacts into their businesses. But we also try to promote businesses that are already doing this. Which brings me here today to Napa, California, where I am with Remi Cohen, who is the CEO of Domaine Carneros. Remi, thank you so much for opening the doors to us and welcoming us in today.
Happy to. Yeah, great to see you, Michael.
Thank you. So let's just start off. You, as CEO, what are some of your responsibilities as CEO of a winery?
Well, I always like to say when I'm doing my job, it means I'm not doing anything because I have everybody else doing what they're supposed to be doing. They feel supported and that they have the tools to do their roles. And the winery is very complex. So sometimes I like to say we have multiple businesses in one. We farm over 400 acres. We produce sparkling wine, which is a very labor-intensive process. And then we have a beautiful hospitality center where we welcome guests. And so all three of those things are like their own individual business.
Now, let me ask you, before I ask about the history of Domaine Carneros, you mentioned sparkling wine is our main wine here, but you can't call it champagne. Can you explain why not?
Yes, so champagne is sparkling wine that's made in the Champagne region of France and made with the special methods and techniques and rules and regulations that the Champenois impose on the name champagne and on the method of champagne making. So when you make sparkling wine anywhere, even in France, outside of the Champagne region, you can't call it champagne.
Gotcha. All right. And can you share with us some of the history and background about Domaine Carneros?
Absolutely. So speaking of champagne, our winery, Domaine Carneros, was founded by Champagne Taittinger. So the family behind Champagne Taittinger was importing their wine into the U.S. Claude Taittinger was coming into the U.S. to visit and sell his wine, and he came up to Napa Valley and fell in love with the region and decided that someday he would have a California sparkling winery. And years later, the property where we are at today became available. It was already planted to Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, which are the grapes that are well known in producing champagne. It's a cooler climate here, similar to that in Champagne. And so he knew this was the perfect fit for him to establish his California sparkling winery. So in 1987, Domaine Carneros was born. We built a beautiful chateau. It's a landmark in the region. The chateau is built in homage to the Château de la Marqueterie, which is a beautiful 17th century chateau owned by the family behind Champagne Taittinger. And it's just a beautiful place to come and visit. As I mentioned, we farm all our own grapes. We're a grower producer. Everything is sustainably farmed. And it's all produced using the same methods that they use to make champagne, which we call the traditional method, or the fermentation in the bottle.
Wow. Now, you mentioned sustainability, and you know, Domaine Carneros has a reputation of being one of the more sustainable vineyards in the region. You know, what does that look like? You even have on your website, I believe, creating the best wines with healthy lands, vines, and people.
Yes.
So what does that look like?
Sustainability has long been a major tenet, a value of everything that we do, and informs our activities here at Domaine Carneros. So as some examples, in 2003, we installed the largest solar array of any winery in the world at the time.
Wow.
And now we like to say that we're amping up on our commitment to solar energy by expanding our solar panels, but also building a microgrid. So we'll have our own storage capabilities in a battery. So the energy that we generate that's excess than what we use gets stored in a battery. We can use it at night, in the evenings. And so it's really improving our ability to generate our own energy. That's an example. Another example is that we built a complex system to gather all the rainfall and collect all the rainfall that falls on our property. And we use that for vineyard irrigation. And then all of the water that we use to make wine gets recycled and reused also for vineyard irrigation. So it's a real holistic system. We won a new award from Napa Rise. It's a festival and event that promotes sustainability that's in association with the Napa Green organization, which is one of our certifying agencies. And Napa Rise just gave us a sustainability award for our packaging reuse. So all the case boxes that you see for that contain wine, when we break them down to pour wine in the hospitality center or to sell individual bottles, we reuse all of those boxes and rebottle into them. And it's a novel program in the industry. We're educating others about it so that they can start using this packaging reuse program.
And what about as far as diversity and equity and inclusion? I know that's also a really important mission of Domaine Carneros. You know, how does that manifest itself here?
Yeah, and that's I think to me that also ties into the sustainability program, because there is a strong social equity component to everything that we do. And like you were saying, we need happy people to make great wine. And so we have our diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, and that committee helps bring awareness to any issues and improvements we can do to make Domaine Carneros a more equitable and inclusive place to work. Okay. We do self-audits, and we look at areas where we think that we can make improvements, engaging with our employees, engaging with the community. We've got several mentorship programs, both internal and external. The external program is one with that's a partnership with Batonage, which is an organization meant to promote women and people who identify as women in the industry. And so that's an amazing mentorship program that we have. We also have a lot of, in general, education incentives, language learning incentives, and other things that we do to try to promote advancement and education within our employees.
And you mentioned, empowering women, and I know that Domaine Carneros has a history of women leadership.
Yes.
Can you talk about that? Because I know industry-wide, statistically, that's not necessarily the case. It seems to be moving up, but, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I think it's really amazing that the Taittingers in 1987 hired Eileen Crane to be the founding winemaker here at Domaine Carneros. Eileen's basically an icon in the industry. She is the person with the most sparkling wine making experience. But at the time, she was one of the first female winemakers in California. And so it was really great that the Taittingers were open-minded enough to have a woman lead the facility. And that has kind of been a guiding philosophy for Domaine Carneros ever since. Not only am I the second person to ever run Domaine Carneros, but our management team is more than half women, which is a great accomplishment and is still unusual in the industry. So also at Taittinger, Vitaly Taittinger is the president, and she's the next generation running the winery. And so it's exciting to see all this commitment to female leadership in the organization.
Looking ahead, and kind of going back to sustainability a little bit, climate change, right, is especially here in California, and this year, has really been pronouncing itself. How are we thinking about, being a productive vineyard with some of the changes that are happening in the weather and the climate? Well,
I think as farmers, we're used to having to react and also be as proactive as possible given an unknown range of situations that could arise. This year already, we've been dealing with excessive rain after 3 drought years, which has its own problems with falling trees and reservoir capabilities and access into the vineyard. And then we've also already been dealing with frost. Our vines are just starting to grow, and we've had really cold nights. And so there's always challenges as farmers. And I think we've really built a lot of resiliency as a result into our industry and into what we do. We are obviously concerned about climate change and being proactive on many different levels, from what we talked about in terms of water conservation, water recycling, renewable energy, and reducing our carbon footprint. And also making sure that our vineyards are planted in a way that they can be sustained through the various circumstances and climate that we are potentially going to meet. So we use drought tolerant rootstocks and things like that in order to really plant and prepare for the future.
Speaking of, is there anything that you're really looking forward to that you for Domaine Carneros, some plans in the works? Anything like that?
We are always having exciting and fun things here. Everything that ranges from what we do in our hospitality. So we have a program here that we call the Art of Sparkling Wine Pairing, Bubbles and Bites. And we pair our beautiful sparkling wines with different bites and cuisine from around the world. So right now we're working on one for Southeast Asia. So that's always a fun thing that we're doing. And then I think our other big excitement for this spring is the functioning microgrid. So it's a project we've been working on for a few years. It'll also help us be an island from the grid if there's power outages. So we'll be able to continue operating. It'll be a seamless transition. And in California, with preventative shutoffs from PG&E, as well as just a lot of unknown uncertainty with the weather, being able to island and be operating on our own with our microgrid is something that we really think is a component of our resiliency and our sustainability.
And final question, for those watching, if they want to support your impact vineyard and get a bottle somehow, how would they go about doing it?
Well, we always invite everybody to come visit us here in Napa Carneros at the beautiful Château. If you haven't been, it's a special place to visit. And you can check us out online at domainecarneros.com, where you can also find our wines on our website.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Well, best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. And
it's been great to be part of Riffle.
I'm looking forward to taking a taste.
Yes, absolutely. Cheers.
Cheers.